Hello, this is Robert Talbot, and welcome to the Principled Prosperity Podcast Show. In a world of negative news cycles, fear, competition, and scarcity, we will meet people who inspire us and teach us to live a better, more prosperous life through their experiences and principles of prosperity. This podcast is here to answer the question, what is true prosperity, and how can I live a more prosperous life? Welcome, Scott. I'm glad to have you here today. This is an opportunity for me to get to hear a little bit more about what you do and how you do your work. And I just want to just welcome you to the Principled Prosperity Podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited about this.
All right, great. Well, let's just get going. Let's dig right in. Can you briefly describe your company, who your ideal clients are, and the kinds of situations they find themselves in when they come to you?
Yeah, I own a company called Listen to Engage. It's something that I've really, my heart for the last 25 years has really been with teenagers and young adults. And as I have been watching over probably the last 10 years or so, I've seen so much of how they are so lonely and stressed out and high anxiety. I'm watching them both in schools. I'm watching them outside in their homes. I'm watching them out in the community. And I was trying to figure out, how do we continue to push them? My heart is to see them become everything that they can become, to be able to raise them up and send them out and to be what they're supposed to be. And I think that the foundation to all that stuff is listening to them. I think it's listening to each other in general. But it's really about pushing them out. I want people that are going to be with them. They're going to love them, challenge them. They're going to grow with them. People that are excited about making the next generation the heroes so that we can pull them up and push them out.
So how do you go about, is this with certain groups that you talk to? How do you go about doing what you're...
Yeah, I'm doing a couple of different things. I'm kind of doing some both coaching and some consulting. And so that is getting into schools, working with professional development with schools, even talking with students in the schools, working with parents, as well as working with organizations. I'm going to be working with the Lions here coming up here pretty soon, doing an engagement with them, as well as with churches and different organizations. And a lot of this is what I hear a lot of organizations saying. They say, Scott, tell me, how do we get young people into our organization? And I had someone ask me that here recently. I just kind of look at them and go, I won't speak about that. And they kind of got these really big eyes. Like, what do you mean? I go, because it's not about advertising to them what you want them to do. I said, they've been advertised to their whole entire life. I said, what you want to be able to do is define what you do and explain what you do, but also listen to where they're at and see if they fit into your organization. Too many times we want to pinhole our students into one way of thinking, and yet we've got to figure out how to help them accomplish what they want to accomplish, not what we want to accomplish for ourselves. So that's the big thing for me, is it's about helping them grow up and to be who they're supposed to be, not necessarily about growing exactly what we want to see grow, which I know is weird, and I know it's a struggle, and kind of the American dream thing is to bring people up underneath and to make us bigger, but that's not how we got to where we are for the most part. And so we need to continue to grow with who we are, but then to bring other people up and guide them into that. So,
yeah. So as we obviously, it sounds in your name is Listen to Engage. So yeah. So the listening part is central to what you're doing. What are one or two of the biggest myths or misconceptions out there when it comes to what you're doing and how you go about what you do?
Yeah, I would say, I think the biggest misconception is that we need to know everything as we go in to help other people. I think we have this mindset that we go in, we have to have all the answers, we have to know what the next thing is, we have to have all the next processes done so that when someone asks us, we can give them the right answer. And I think we need to go in and again, that's still making it about us, right? I think we need to learn to be present and in the moment. Too many times when someone asks, asking us a question, our first reaction is to give this great answer because we want to make ourselves sound really good. But what happens if we follow up their question with another question to make them think through that? What happens if we are given a smaller piece of information, but then let them dig into it and actually learn from the process, as opposed to us giving that stuff? So for me, I've got a process called the listen to engage process, which is first to listen to them, and then it's to ask questions about who they are, where they're going, their direction, and then actually be able to teach them through that. But too many times we skip all that stuff and go straight into teaching. And I think we're missing the part where they're actually supposed to grow up and become adults. And even our young adults, we just kind of shoehorn them in. And how do we let them grow? So I was at a college event here recently. We're kind of sitting around and they were studying the Bible. And so all of a sudden I'm the old white guy that's sitting at the table with very racially diverse students, and they were all freshmen and maybe a couple sophomores. And they all ask a certain question. They go, "Hey, what about this?" And they'd all turn to me, like I was supposed to be brilliant and have all the answers. And I said, "I don't know. What do you guys think?" I said, "Where does the scripture say this? And where does it say?" And all of a sudden, they are starting to dig in and look into it, and they were learning how to learn. And I think all of a sudden, instead of giving that answer, so I think the biggest thing is we think that we have to have all the right answers, and I don't see that. I think we have the right questions, and then know where to look to help them find the answers.
So there's definitely a lot of times when we talk to people, we do that, don't we? We try to feel like we feel like we need to make ourselves important, or to have the right thing to say. It's kind of stressful, isn't it, to try to live that kind of life?
It is. I remember it was 25 years ago. I was working with some students. They're junior hires and high schoolers. And middle schoolers started asking me, junior hires asking me, 6th grade, 7th grade, asking me questions. I just kind of look at them and go, I was in college. I'm like, I don't know the answer. And then I started just to go, but let's figure that out together. Let's talk about that. And then you go away, I'll go away. We'll kind of do our own research and come back and discuss it. And all of a sudden, that pressure, as you talked about, began to release, because all of a sudden, I don't have to have all the right answers, but I have to be able to engage with them and actually have a conversation with them. And that was really one of the defining moments of, it's not all about me. So,
yeah. And the young people today, with the technological advances that we didn't have when we were younger, as whether parents or teachers or anybody who works with young people, we did, for the most part, if you're above 40 or maybe 35, you didn't grow up with all that stuff. And so the way they think and the types of processes that they go through is kind of foreign, right?
Yeah. And the other part is that if we're here just to give information, they already have Google, right? They have every answer they want. It's not always right. Don't get me wrong. But they have places they can go for the knowledge part, right? Or maybe not knowledge, for information, right? They have a place where they can go get information. My question is, are they able to question the information they're getting to actually be able to make it so they're finding the right answers in the right direction for them?
And this is a certain sort of time for people when their brain is developing, right?
Correct.
I mean, this is a time when young people are learning how to think in abstract ways, and there's a lot of practicing going on.
Absolutely. And I think the other part of that is when we talk about some of the challenges we have, I think time's an issue, right? Don't we all struggle with how much time we have to put into developing somebody else, whether it's in your job as a teacher, whether it's in your job as an organization, or even as a parent, right? You come home and you're tired and you're worn out and you go, how do I have the time to do that after all this stuff I've done today? I've still got to get ready for tomorrow. I've got all this. And we worry about the time. And I don't think it takes much time. I think it needs to be integrated into our lives a little bit more.
So tell me a little bit about your backstory. Tell me about, what maybe some interests, or why are you doing this? How's this all fit?
Yeah. I've worked with teenagers for almost 25 years. And my passion has always wanting to see them grow and to become who they're supposed to be. And so I spent several years in ministry with youth ministry and working with students in that inside the church. And as I started to kind of get out of that professional ministry aspect, and I was able to just kind of start traveling around and seeing different places and talking to different people, I was starting to realize that we weren't training our adults well enough to be able to actually engage with our students. We're kind of throwing them into the lion's den and going, "Hey, go!" And they didn't know what they were doing, and they were frustrated and worried. And the kids were still having a good time. That doesn't bother them, but our adults were. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to make a bigger impact with students, how do I help our adults, every adult that comes in contact with students, begin to go, that's kind of my job. This is part of my responsibility to see this next generation come up. And so, I as I was kind of leaving that, I was being mentored by a guy named Lee. Now, my first connection with Lee, let me tell you about this. My first connection with Lee, I'm walking up and I'm going to play softball. All right, I love competition, so I'm going to go play softball. And so he puts on. I'm walking up to the field, and I have a ball glove on my head because that's just where I carried it when I was playing, going out to the field. And he walks up and he stands about this close to me, and he has this deep voice, and he says, "So, Scott, what's going on in your life?" And I was like, I took a step back because he was in my personal bubble, and I said, "You know what? I can't do this right now. Like, this is not the time. You know, I'm kind of bouncing around ADHD. I'm kind of moving around." And he was like, I was like, "This is not the time. I can't do that right now. I got to just give me a moment." Right. I said, "If we can schedule another time," I probably didn't use those words yet. "Another time would be good." And so Lee and I started meeting together regularly. And the first time I remember sitting down with Lee, we went to a coffee shop and we get our coffees or whatever, and we sit down in the chair. And Lee sits down and he asks me a question, and I started to answer, and he did something that not many people have done with me. I don't know if it was the first one, but it was this. As I look back, I know my mom did it a lot. But he just looked at me and did this as I was talking. And he just stared at me. And he was listening. And then after a certain amount of time, as I started to wind down because my AD brain was going blah, blah, all over the place, he'd ask me a question, not about what he wanted to know, about something he heard me say. And so then I would dig a little bit deeper into that, right? And then he'd ask me a question, what I dug in deeper, and we get deeper and deeper. But he was actually paying attention to me. And I was 25 years old or something. Like I felt old, right? 25, 26, 27, somewhere in there, I felt old. And yet to have somebody sit down and actually pay attention and listen and ask these questions. And then he would teach through that. Like it was this, then he'd teach through it, because then he'd go, well, this is what I see you doing this and this and this, and how do you connect with it? And it was the most amazing thing. And so my connection to this whole listening to engage comes from Lee as I watched. And so I've taken that and I've started working with other people, right? And not just working with them, just listening to them. And for the last year and a half, 2 years, I've been sitting in a coffee shop in my town. And I'd sit there at a table. I don't work there. Some people think I do. But I'd sit there and people would just start walking up and talking to me. And I'm just listening, and I ask a question and they'd answer, and I ask a question and we kind of dig in, and they'd leave, and I'd see them again a little bit later. Because it was this thing that people don't feel like they're connected to other people. And I think about our teenagers and where they're stuck, and they're in this place where they can have all the wisdom and knowledge and all this stuff, but there's nobody there to listen. And we as parents, we're trying hard. You know, we're working jobs, some of us 2 and 3 jobs. You know, we're doing everything we can to raise them, but it's taking us away from them. And so how do we begin to be present? And so that's kind of my story going in, right? It's experiencing it for myself and then begin to practice on other people and going, this stuff really works. This whole listening thing, as an ADHD person, I hate it. It's really hard. I struggle with it, to not be thinking and wanting to answer the questions in my head and ask somebody when they're just starting first to start answering the question, right?
Yeah.
But to be able to keep those questions long enough and to be listening through the end, that's hard.
Yeah.
But they want to feel heard, just like most of us do. So,
Yeah. And so tell me just a little bit, tell just a little bit about your family. You're kind of in the throes of this teenage stuff yourself, aren't you?
yeah. So I have, let's see here, I've got a daughter in the 8th grade, and I have a son in the 9th grade. And so kind of watching them, I've been waiting for them to get in middle school and high school, because those are the years I was like, this is what I've been preparing for my whole entire life. My wife is a teacher. She's been teaching special ed, and this year she's starting to teach math. And so kind of hearing some of the stories that she has, and not sharing too much of what she goes through, but there are struggles as teachers as you go in. And my kids struggling through, and you know what? As parents, right, I think too many times we think that they're always going to be our best friends going throughout life, and we're going to keep pushing through. And there are times my kids didn't want to talk to me. And there are times that they wanted to go play with their friends. And I'm just like, but what about me? Like, you started to get this complex, right? But then you can kind of see them start to come back. But that's their adventure they've got to figure out. And too many times we want to keep holding them back in as parents and not letting them go. And how do we prepare them, as opposed to telling them what to think? How do we prepare them how to think? So, right. Yeah, so my family it's branching out there. It's getting a little crazy around here. So excited, but I didn't know as much as a youth pastor way back in the day when I didn't have kids. Yeah. And I'm like, why was I telling parents that? That was stupid. Like, what was I thinking? So, yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, just let's dip into just for a minute about the title of this podcast, just for a moment. We'll go back into your stuff. But what do you think prosperity is, and do you think you've lived a prosperous life?
Yeah. I think that for me, that terminology brings up a couple of different questions and a couple of different ideas. Uh-huh. And I think the first one jumps out for me is a bunch of money. Like, you're prosperous, you've got a lot of money. And if we're talking that direction, no, I have not lived a prosperous life. But I look on the other side and go, for me, prosperous has been a lot about impact, and how much impact I've had over with other people, not over other people, but with people and in their lives. And so I think with prosperity, I think to have more impact, sometimes you need to have more money. So there's that impact to have the money so that you can have more impact. So there's that part that I'm working on to get to that part. But too many times we think it's all about money. And I'll tell you, the prosperity that I've seen is with my family and the places I've gotten to go to speak and travel to and take my family with that I could not have done on my own. Talking about money and prosperity, I didn't have the money to do that. But because of being able to impact other people, it's given me opportunities from traveling and that kind of stuff with my family. So money, no, working on it. But the impact I've had with people is kind of really where I've put a lot of my effort in the last 25 years.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you. So let's go back a little bit. What is the biggest challenge your ideal clients usually face?
The biggest one. I think it kind of depends. I think one is time. They don't know where to put this into listening, right? So you can be in a classroom as a teacher or administrator, and you go, I have time. I'm trying to put out flyers all the time. I'm trying to teach my information. I've got all this stuff I have to walk through and work through, right? So that all the laws I have to follow, all the information they have to have in there, all the tests I have to be given, like all these things are in the way. And I've only got so much time. And so they say, where do I have the time to put the listening at? Which, to me, the listening is just the foundation to actually sending them, knowing about them, and getting them to be who they're supposed to be, right?
Okay.
But the foundation is time of going, I don't know where to put that. As parents, where do I have time? I get home from work, and then I've got to cook dinner, and then I've got to do the laundry, and then I've got to clean the house, and like all this stuff keeps flowing out. And so where do we have the time to do this as an organization? I've got all the paperwork. I've got to create all this, publicity that goes out and advertising, and where do I have time to actually spend with one of my employees or somebody that I'm actually working with? Because I get done with working, work family day long, and then I have to write reports. And so it's all about the reports. And so I'm talking to people about the reports, and they figure, how do I have time to actually invest into somebody? So I think that's probably the biggest one.
So what does success look like for your ideal client?
Success has got to be the fact that they are getting past just the teaching aspect and the training of life, right? It is being able to release that you have this responsibility. I wore this shirt today that says, the pursuit is happiness, not the pursuit of happiness. And too many times we look at our kids, we feel like we have to shove it all into one little small role, right? Like we've got to get it all done. But if we're teaching the longer game, right, that's where the moments come in, not the cram. Now, there are times for vacations, there's time for those longer pieces, but if we begin to be able to release ourselves and go, man, their whole life does not fall on this amount of time, but we want to stretch that out. And so success is learning to live in the moments that we have with our students, right? It's learning to live in that moment so that when the opportunity arises, when I'm in that classroom, when I'm at the church, when I'm at the Lions and I have a connection piece, when I'm out in the coffee shop, when I'm with my kids, we take advantage of the moments that people are willing to sit with you. And that's the success. It's the success that they are actually engaging with you. To me, that's success. If they start talking back, woo, it's like I've hit the jackpot. Because too many times we look, and I've seen the generational gap where our older adults don't talk with our teenagers, young adults, and vice versa, because like they're scared or something. Like they're worried what the other person is going to say. There's fear there. I don't know what to say. And so engaging, it's that piece where they actually have a conversation and something comes out of that. Another one for me is I've been able to work with some people and watch them leave here and go out and do something else, right? Like I've been able to work into their lives, so they all of a sudden their futures opened up, and they're now off doing something with a college in my backyard. I've had the opportunity to work with some college students. And a lot of people, when you work with college students, you're thinking in the organization in a town that, oh, I'm going to train them and they're going to stay here and and I'm like, whoa. Here's the deal. Train them, listen to them, be a part of their lives, but send them out to go do what they're supposed to do, because more than likely they're not staying here. But you want to build them so they can go out and change the world in their own way, right? And I've been able to watch that. I'll tell you, the engaging with somebody so that they're listening to you and paying attention to you, and then sending them out, because it's not about you. It's really about them. They're the hero. How do we begin to make them the hero and us the guide? And that's the change of the mindset. It's not about me. It's about them. And that's a hard one to make. So this is success for me is being with them engaged and having conversations and then sending them out.
Sounds great. Great. Do you have, you talked about some success stories or some folks where you've spent time with and then they've gone out. Do you have a story you could tell about that?
Yeah. So I this past year I had a student that came in, play basketball here at William Penn, and he'd been here for a year or two. I met him at a retreat a year and a half ago, and we just kind of hit it off, which was really cool. And we're connecting, and there's a whole retreat going on. But he came back, and he's just happened to be in my backyard. All the other people weren't, but he just happened to be. So he came to me the next year, and he said, "Hey, Scott, would you mentor me?" And I was like, "Yes, let's do that." And so I can meet with him once a week, and we went over some different things, and we'd talk, and then we started out with kind of I wouldn't say curriculum, but it's just something we kind of read through together. And then he would kind of follow through with that, and we'd have discussion. Again, I wasn't there to tell him what it said, but to have a conversation.
Right.
That was still there, but the foundation then became, he was asking me questions about personal life. and about where he was going and how to make decisions and how do I do this versus this, and should I go here or go there? And then to watch him now, so the cool thing is now he has gone off back home to his hometown with his family. He's got a job, and he just started a podcast.
Oh, really?
And so he is doing, I think it's Life with Seven or something, like the Life of Seven, because his name is Seven. He's from another country. His name means seven, or Seth, or like he's got several different names, but because of his original language. But now I'm watching him interviewing people, some of the same questions I was asking him as he sat across the table from me. And now he's created a podcast, So it's like he learned not just the foundational of the teaching. It was he's taken what he's learned and moved on. And so now he's connected with other people in the exact same way. And if we can begin to change the world where we're impacting one person at a time. Listen, if I don't impact anybody else, I've impacted Seth. And now he is impacting not just his family and the people in he's got a podcast on YouTube that goes all over the world.
Yeah.
And so, man, we got to stop thinking about us and start pushing people out and go, man, go pursue it. Go after it. Go listen to somebody else. Ask the right questions. And he's making a podcast out of it. So there you go. Pretty exciting. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to do that.
You bet. I've really enjoyed it, and looking forward to seeing how all this continues to grow, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Principled Prosperity Podcast. You can find more podcasts like these at principledprosperitypodcast.com. This is Robert Talbot, and thank you for listening.